competition has begun. Conference tournament champions.
Congratulations to the American Athletic Conference champions.
Welcome into the American Studios. I'm Morgan Uber. After a week off from All-American, it's great to be back here with you as we've got plenty to catch you up on here in the American Athletic Conference. Dating all the way back to 2014, all 11 American football programs have been ranked in the AP Top 25 poll, and only 2 other FBS conferences can lay claim to that accomplishment. And that gets us started right here with our Week 7 headlines, with number 25 Tulane checking into the AP poll for the first time since 1998. The Green Wave riding momentum. You better hang tight or hang loose. UCF QB John Rice Plumlee, fresh off the best game of his career and a record-setting performance with 7 total TDs. And just the second quadruple overtime game in American history, East Carolina pulling off a huge rally to take down Memphis. And with that, we now like to welcome in our ESPN college football analyst, Taylor McHargue. Taylor, great to be back here with you. A week off. You had a week off also in the broadcast booth. How'd you spend this bye?
I watched all of these amazing games we had on last weekend between what was going on in the American Conference, but then also obviously the Tennessee-Alabama game, the TCU game. So I got to be a fan for the weekend and really enjoyed it.
Well, as we take a look here at what's happening within the American, it's really interesting. 3 teams sort of separating themselves here at the top, all undefeated, with East Carolina, Memphis, Navy, all right now in the middle of the pack at 2-2. When you take a look here at this middle of the pack, who do you like to break away and continue trending up?
I still think East Carolina has the pieces on its roster right now to get themselves back in contention. And this week, obviously a big week for them to try and get back in the conversation for the American Conference crown. Tulane, to me, obviously that is the story of the season. And I can remember back to when we would play them in the Dome and there'd be 5,000 people there. And what Willie Fritz has done with Tulane in his short time there, especially in a bounce-back season after their 2-10 2021 season, I think this is one of the best stories in all of college football this year. And if they continue to play defense at the level that they are, you're going to continue to see them win games and stay up near the top of this American Conference chase.
Let's talk about Tulane, and with them being ranked in the AP poll for the first time in 24 years. You mentioned Coach Fritz, the job he's done there, just named to the Bear Bryant Award watch list for Coach of the Year. Just a tremendous story. We've talked so much about them this season, but the one thing that stayed consistent throughout is their defense, a top 20 defense, number 17 in the country. What's been the most consistent thing about that unit here this season?
There's no MAs really. There's no mental errors. There's no guys that are out of place. You have top-down team defense, and they tackle well. And I go back to their win a couple weeks ago against East Carolina, where I really feel like that was one of their best performances of the season. Held that East Carolina explosive offense to under 10 points. Obviously, everybody thinks about the big win against Kansas State as well. Last week was really the only performance on defense against South Florida that there was any sort of concerns. I thought South Florida got most of what they wanted on the offensive side against Tulane's defense, but I expect them to bounce back this week against Memphis. But for the duration of this season to this point, Tulane just playing good, consistent, clean defense and setting up their offense a lot of times with good field position. They're just playing good team football, and it starts on that defensive side.
They're the best story in college football this season with the turnaround that we've seen from this program. And to think right now, would it been for that Southern Miss game, they could be undefeated at 7-0, but maybe it was the best thing that could have happened for them with the way that they play K-State, come up with that win, the response, they lose to Southern Miss. Why do you expect, though, it to be different this time around, being ranked in the AP poll, all the national media attention this week? How do you expect them to keep their edge here this weekend against Memphis?
I think the difference is that they're playing a conference opponent, and it's a team that you can look up and clearly see, okay, this Memphis team, the last 2 weeks, they ended up losing, but both of those should have been wins. And if that was the case, that'd be a 4-0 in conference Memphis team. So I imagine Coach Fritz will have his guys ready to go, and this will have their attention. The Southern Miss game earlier in the season was just your classic trap game. You're playing a Sun Belt team after going on the road and beating a Big 12 team. It's a letdown spot, and Michael Pratt didn't play well. He had the second half pick six, and they had a slight first half lead. They gave it up in the second half, and they just didn't play well. I do not expect that type of performance this week. Again, I think Coach Fritz will have his guys ready to go against Memphis.
Well, they have an opponent who is hungry for a win after dropping their last two games with having really big leads. With Houston, a 19-point lead. The Tigers got out to a 17-0 start over East Carolina last week. When you take a look at those last two games, what was the common thread?
I thought Memphis played too safe down the stretch. I thought some of it looked like we're just playing to wait out the clock instead of going and trying to take the game over and solidify a win, especially against Houston. I thought there were opportunities for them to put that game away, and they were at home in that one. I mean, that game it was a minute and 20 seconds left, and Memphis was still leading by 2 scores. And then against East Carolina on the road, when you're playing a team that's as explosive on offense as East Carolina is, you've got to keep the foot down on the throttle for all four quarters. And I thought they just relaxed late. And that's the sign of a young team that's just trying to learn how to win. I've been on one of those teams before where you just can't figure out a way to put people away. Part of that is once you get that early lead, you've got to keep the throttle down with play calling and being aggressive on the defensive side, still coming after people. Because in this conference, if you give teams, especially like in East Carolina, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile and come back on you, just like the last 2 weeks with Houston and East Carolina.
When you take a look at quarterback Seth Hennigan and this offense on Memphis, what's the single biggest adjustment maybe they can make here this week to get things trending in the right direction?
No, I think it starts again with play calling. I think they've gotten too relaxed in the later parts of the game, specifically the fourth quarter. I would like to see with Seth Hennigan, he's got the capability to drive the ball downfield and take those shot plays where if you pick up a first down run and get it to second and manageable, second medium, take a shot over the top where the defense may be getting closer to the line of scrimmage, trying to get your offense on the field because they need the ball back. Those are the opportunities where you can hit those home run balls and really put a team away. And that's what I'm looking for this week, specifically for Seth Hennigan in that offense.
Well, the team that beat Memphis in that 4-overtime thriller, East Carolina, taking on one of the hottest teams in the country in this conference. Really, when you look at what UCF has done, they're the only team in the FBS to have 600 yards of total offense 3 times this season. 2 of those have come in the past 2 weeks. What's been the single biggest adjustment that the Knights have made here?
They look like a completely different team to me in the last couple weeks as opposed to the first part of the season. And I really think about that game against Louisville where UCF, we started wondering, man, this might be a close to 500 type team if they play that on the offensive side like they showed against Louisville. All of a sudden, John Rice Plumlee is now getting the ball downfield, hitting those explosive shot plays. We see some of these right here, specifically in that second half against SMU. I thought that may be the turning point in the entire season for UCF. It was a midweek game. You had all the craziness with the hurricane, and they come back out in the second half, get that big win over SMU, and now it feels like they have a complete offense. Instead of just relying on John Rice Plumlee to run the ball, they're now hitting those shot plays over the top, and it feels like a more balanced attack. If you think about it, they just have that one loss to Louisville. This team, along with Tulane, if they hadn't had those close losses, we'd be talking about 3 undefeated teams in the American right now.
Greenville, though, it's a tough place to play, a hostile environment. And when you look at UCF, they've only had 1 road game. That was at FAU. This will be their first conference road game. So it'll be a big test. When you think about for the Pirates, 4 overtimes, if you're a player, Taylor, in that game, are you gassed or are you hyped up after that?
No, you're pumped up. That's the type of game that you come back and you get a big win at home. That could be a springboard through the rest of your season. I mean, the flip side is really like for Memphis to give away those 2 games late. You've got to really pick yourself up off the mat. For ECU, you come back in a game like that, you get a 4 overtime win, and then now you're getting UCF coming in. That's the type. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better scenario and situation going into that game, and I think they will carry that energy with them. That's what I'm expecting out of the Pirates this week.
Last year, it came down to the final 23 seconds between the Knights and Pirates, so we're expecting another good one. I mean, the Pirates, though, they can't look ahead at what they have here coming on their schedule coming up. I mean, UCF, their biggest test here right now this week, but it doesn't get any easier for the Pirates. They'll head to BYU, then they'll have a bye before they at Cincinnati and then have to host Houston. When you take a look here at their schedule, what's the biggest thing that jumps out?
Well, this is why I said at the top that this was the team out of the middle that I have my eyes on to potentially sneak back in this race, because you have the teams coming up that if they were to run the schedule in conference, let's take BYU out of it for a second. If you look at UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, you have opportunities here to take down the big dogs in the conference. And I know that's a tall task, but if they do that, all of a sudden you have ECU back right at the top in the mix for this conference race, with their conference loss, their last one being against Tulane, who we expect to be right there with them as well. So I also think about Cincinnati the past couple of weeks has been gettable. I mean, Tulsa gave them everything they could have hoped for. And then South Florida, I had that game. There was an opportunity for South Florida late in that game to pick up a fourth down and potentially go win that game. So Cincinnati right now, they're sort of on the edge of giving a game away, and ECU is certainly capable of beating that Bearcats team.
You mentioned Cincinnati, and they potentially could be without their starting quarterback again here this week, Ben Bryant. They did have the off week last week to get him healthy, but he did leave that South Florida game with a concussion, and also wide receiver Tyler Scott questionable. So really it could be an interesting one here in Dallas, Texas, as SMU and Cincinnati are part of our Week 8 football schedule. But things, though, kick off on Friday night with Tulsa at Temple, Cincinnati, of course, at SMU like we mentioned, and then Houston at Navy could be one to keep your eye on. Memphis at Tulane. The Green Wave will look to keep things rolling and undefeated in conference. And then, of course, UCF at East Carolina, a game that we've talked so much about. Taylor, when you take a look here at the Week 8 schedule, what are we really going to find out here about these teams?
Well, this week has the potential to really be the week that those teams at the top could separate themselves. If you think about Cincinnati, UCF, and Tulane, if they all three were to get wins, now it starts to feel like, okay, it's those three teams and everybody else. Now, if any of them drop a game, that's where it starts to get muddy again, and you can have a team like a Memphis or even a Houston, an ECU climb back in and get into the mix. But to this point in the season, it does feel like we have those three teams at the top and then everybody else. I think this is the defining week of the season to this point to figure out, are we still going to have more of that separation, or is a different team out of the middle going to climb back in and get themselves into contention?
Well, we'll find out. But first, I want to do something a little bit different this week. We're going to make some dark horse picks here. When you take a look at what we've got going on in Week 8, who's your dark horse?
I think Navy can beat this Houston team, and I'm actually taking them to beat Houston. 11 a.m. kick in Annapolis. This is the type of game that I feel like you look up, you're going through sort of your lazy morning and you look up halfway through, in the first half, and Navy's up 2 scores. It's that type of game, I feel like. And Houston, they had the big win against Memphis and came back in that game on the road again, early kick against the Service Academy. Houston, to this point in the season, has not shown nearly what we expected out of them on the offensive side. If they don't come out early and jump on Navy, would not surprise me at all if Navy comes away with a win in this game.
I like it. I've got the Pirates over the Knights here as my dark horse pick. I think with over the last 6 meetings, you look at what they've done. 0 for 6 in the last 6 years. This is East Carolina's time to shine. I think they have the right pieces. Running back Keaton Mitchell playing some of the best football of his life right now. They have a leader in their quarterback, Holton Ahlers. I like the Pirates to come away here with this one and spoil the Knights season. So we'll see what happens, and we can't wait to break it down with you here next week. Taylor, thanks so much for taking the time as always.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan.
Oh, what a ball this is from Bradley. Here is Scott. Guard! Kristen Scott finds herself on the ball in the penalty area. You know what's coming next.
And McKenna Melville. South Florida survives the surge.
The conference announced the players of the week in volleyball and men's and women's soccer. And as we do each and every week, let's take a look at the top performances right here in American's Best. In volleyball, number 24 Houston, ranked for the first time since 1994, leads the way in the conference standings. And the Cougs are doing it behind some dominant defense from their junior libero, Kate Georgiadis. She was named the Defensive Player of the Week after finishing with just over 7 digs per set. Georgiadis picked up 27 digs at Memphis, which is the 3rd most digs in a 3-set match in program history. In men's soccer, Temple's Owen Goronsky earned his 2nd Goalkeeper of the Week award this season after picking up a clean sheet against FAU on Friday. The redshirt junior finished with 6 saves in the 1-0 win. In women's soccer, UCF forward Kristen Scott was named the Offensive Player of the Week after a dominant offensive week. The senior scored 2 goals in both of the night's matches against Cincinnati and Tulsa. Plus, she also had an assist. UCF went 2-0 on the week, and the Knights are currently atop the conference standings. There's just 1 week remaining in regular season of American women's soccer. With 3 matches for the top 2 teams in the conference, UCF currently has the slight edge over in-state rivals South Florida. Both teams in action tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. In men's soccer, 5 conference matches over the weekend. And finally, in volleyball, conference play continuing to heat up with a total of 10 matches. Of course, for all those schedules, you can visit theamerican.org. It's the NCAA's 5th annual Diversity and Inclusion Week, and today the focus is on strength and unity. And joining us now to discuss this social media campaign and so much more is Memphis women's soccer player Maya Jones. Maya, first off, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. As a part of the NCAA's Diversity and Inclusion campaign, what activities, what conversations have gone on there at Memphis throughout this week?
So this week we've kind of focused on gathering together kind of as a group and doing our best to engage like face to face as much as we can. So on Monday we got together and we did safe zone training, which was basically for the first day and the second day, which was like allyship and the third day unity as well. And we focused on like the LGBTQ community. Today, we're also taking videos of administrators talking about how they see unity and how they define allyship. And then tomorrow, I believe we're doing the same thing with administrators as well. So kind of just community engagement, taking videos and just like continuing this conversation.
This is so much more, though, than just 1 week, and you're very active there on Memphis's campus, a part of the UMAID organization, the diversity group there, a part of SAC. What particularly, has given you the interest, and you've been involved in some student-athlete roundtables. Share with us what that experience was like for you and what you learned from your fellow student-athletes.
So I think for myself, I'm just doing my best to have engagement from our student-athletes and show them that, like, we can have the conversation ourselves, not necessarily letting just our administrators and our leaders do that. So I've kind of done my best to maybe pave a pathway for like the rest of my fellow teammates or my student athletes to feel comfortable in doing the same thing. So I led a few roundtables in like education and inequalities, and there was a lot of engagement in that. And I'm hoping to have another student athlete do the same thing. So I'm just doing my best to be a leader as a student athlete and just help my community as obviously in Memphis.
2 years ago, Memphis unveiled its new equality patch, dignity, respect, and equality. 3 words there specific to that patch. Every time you wear it, every time it's on your uniform, what does it represent and what do you think about?
So the words are actually words that Martin Luther King said in his final speech in Memphis. So I think it's very historical for us to be wearing and representing those words. For me, and I know for the rest of like our UMAID staff and our student athletes, wearing the patch is kind of a way to show that like we are upholding these beliefs and trying to continue this fight for obviously inequality. And I think for people that are obviously coming to the school and they see us wearing this patch, it shows that we are allies and that we have to uphold those beliefs and these words essentially.
With everything that you've learned, understanding others' perspectives, cultures, races, ethnicities, how do you believe that it's going to prepare you for life after Memphis, whatever that will be?
That's a good question. I think for myself, like the biggest thing that I've learned is like your words matter and your actions matter. Everybody has their own experiences, their own stories. We're all individuals in our own way. So I think it's so important to know that everybody needs to be treated a certain way and you have to respect them based on their experiences, based on their stories. So I think that's something that I really can take into my future with my daily interactions through my job and whatever I'm in, whether it's in sport, etc.
Also, as a part of diversity and inclusion is females in sport. And how would you say, as we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX, well, we've come a really long way, what work still needs to be done?
I think so much has been done already up to this point. It's a continuous ongoing battle, just as like everything else that we're doing. But I think specifically in terms of like gender, I think that's something, especially on the women's side, that needs to be upheld a little better. I think especially with like, this is not just including Memphis, this is all around the country in terms of like facilities that are provided to women's teams, and just like also the way we are broadcasting and advertising games. I think that's something that I really believe should be pushed, but I believe it's something that we are pushing as a community, obviously in Memphis and throughout the rest of the NCAA.
Maya, thank you so much for all the outstanding work you do. It's great to see you excel both on and off the pitch. Really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you so much.
After week 7 of American football, programs soaring to new heights, record books being rewritten. We've got the 2 best plays from the gridiron, plus we've also got the best moments from the pitch, and we'll start right there at number 5. South Florida at East Carolina women's soccer knotted up 1-1 late in the second. A cross inside that leads to a clutch one-touch goal by Isaiah Arichabala Blanco. The freshman with her first goal of the season, scoring the game winner for her team. Also getting individual honors, earning Rookie of the Week in the conference. From the pitch to the gridiron at number 4, Tulane at South Florida. Third quarter, tied at 17. Tajay Spears, watch out, hits the hole, and it's a clear path ahead as he takes it all the way. Look at the speed. The camera can't even keep up with him. This 75-yard TD, a career long for Spears. And how about Tulane, 3-0 in the American for the first time in program history. At number 3, men's soccer, Memphis at Tulsa. A set-piece opportunity here for the Golden Hurricane, as Mariano Fazio with the header assist to himself with a no-look goal. Fazio, absolutely brilliant, uses his noggin, gets back underneath it, and picks up a goal for his team. Tulsa wins it 3-0. At number 2, the Deuce, Keaton Mitchell in double OT of Memphis at East Carolina. Holt Nailers with the handoff to Mitchell, sheds off 2 defenders, still on his feet, cuts back, and touchdown Pirates. Mitchell's 3rd touchdown on the day, and Pirates win just the 2nd quadruple overtime game in conference history. Finally, at number 1, FIU at South Florida men's soccer. A nice cross inside, and the Bulls, Brian Schaefer goes for a spin, a brilliant bicycle kick from Schaefer. We'll give him a 10 out of 10 on the goal, but we've got more acrobatics here. Not quite sticking the landing there, so Schaefer will give you a 7 out of 10 there on that celebration. And as always, if you see a top play happen live, be sure to let us know on social media using the hashtag #AmericanTopPlays, and you can tweet at the American Conference at American_conf. Next week kicks off the fall championship season in Tulsa with cross country. You can watch that on ESPN+. And then following, we'll have women's soccer, men's soccer, plenty more to follow. And we'll keep you updated with all of the big games and news here on All American. We'll see you next time.